Hello, hello! Welcome back to Brenda's Books. Thank you for coming back to listen to more of Queen Andrea. If you would like to follow Brenda's Books online, I am on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Last week I told you that Chapter 6 was called Lost in Loopholes, but I have since deleted that chapter because it needed to go. Sometimes you just gotta let them go. And also, the pertinent information in that chapter you will find out later anyway, so it was kind of like being redundant. Anyway, today I will be narrating for you the new Chapter 6, which is called You Will Regret It. Here we go. Andrea! The Queen brushed away the whisper as a piece of grass tickled her ear. Andrea! This time the Queen recognized the voice. I'm still tired, Caleen. Something shook her shoulders, and Andrea jolted awake. Caleen's worried face stared at hers as she tucked a loose strand of Andrea's hair behind her ear. Did you sleep here all night? The Queen now realized her face lay on top of an open book. As she moved to lift her head, the page stuck to her cheek. Gently, she peeled it off. She moaned as she gingerly moved her locked neck to a rightful position. She rubbed her eyes as she gazed around the library, which started to lighten with the blink of dawn. A half-dozen books still lay open on top of her double-desk combination. I didn't mean to sleep at all, actually, Andrea said. Then she coughed when her voice came out raspy. I still have so much more to accomplish. You're pushing yourself too hard, Caleen said. You will figure all this out in due time. Andrea shook her head. Ah! Her hand flitted up to her strained neck. That's just it. I don't have time. Caleen sighed and helped Andrea to her feet. Your royal advisor wants to see you. Chancellor Dolion? What on earth for? Caleen brushed some lint off Andrea's sleeve. It's not like he will tell me. Andrea groaned. I cannot see him now. I'm in the same clothes I wore yesterday. Yes, Caleen said, as she reached up to the Queen's temple and pulled out a pen that was somehow stubborn enough to attach to her hair. And I think I can fix this mess on your head in less than 5 minutes. You have always been a miracle worker. Caleen smiled as she picked up Andrea's heels off the floor and moved to put them on her feet. Oh, please. I cannot wear those dreadful things at this early hour. Caleen smirked. Would you rather have the Queen be seen walking around barefoot? No one will see, and no one will know if you do not mention it. Caleen let out a breathless laugh. This is almost as risky as your bad habit of sitting on the ground. I do not do that very often. Caleen laughed out loud. Only every day. Shh! Caleen slapped a hand over her mouth, then picked up Andrea's shoes and pulled her out into the hallway. The two girls tiptoed along the velvet carpet, in and out of shadows through the dim morning light. You know, Caleen whispered, even at this time of day I sometimes find Your Majesty. The girls stopped short at the shadow of a man sitting on a chair at a small round table on the balcony. He stood immediately and dropped his book. He bent to retrieve it and attempted to turn his motion into a bow. Even in the shadow, Andrea recognized his fragile frame. Lord Bartholomew, I did not expect to see you at this hour. Andrea fixed her long skirt to make sure her feet were covered. Oh yes, I start every morning off with a good book and a cup of tea. And this spot on your balcony seems to suit me best. I am happy to hear it. Good morning, my lord. Bartholomew bowed, and Andrea pivoted and headed up the spiral staircase, with Caleen on her heels. Once they reached the Queen's bedchamber, Caleen shut the door behind them, and they both burst into a fit of quiet giggles. Do you think he saw your feet? Andrea shook her head. Thank goodness I slept in this long gown. And I do believe it was too dark for him to see its true likeness to know I have not changed. Caleen let out a long breath. That was close. Now let's get you ready for Chancellor Dolion. Andrea rolled her head. I'd rather speak with Bartholomew. How very unorthodox, Chancellor Dolion, for a lord to request the presence of his queen at such an early hour. Andraya entered the threshold of Dolion's private office, which was much smaller than the queen's, and furnished with large leather chairs, and numerous flags and sculpted figurines on the mantels. This better be important. I have a lot of work to do before our meetings today. Dolion shifted from his study of a painting on the wall to face Andraya. For a moment he actually appeared unguarded, with no sign of a scowl, and when he gazed in her direction, his calm expression revealed his natural handsome features. Contrary to the popular glued-back hair royal men possessed, his was looser, with a slight wave to it, and not quite as black as Andraya's. His facial features were sharp and masculine, as was his well-built frame. Then his evil smirk returned. I do recall, Your Majesty, that you prefer I advise you before another council meeting. I am your royal advisor, after all. I suppose you're right. Do you have new information for me? Dolion buttoned his navy lapel and stood straighter. Not exactly. I only wanted to go over Gulen's trade agreements with you. Well, that won't be necessary, Chancellor. I intend to lead the discussion in a different direction entirely. Dolion frowned. His chest heaved with a sigh as he turned his head to gaze back at the painting on the wall. Andraya peered over at the artwork as well. It was a fine drawing of all 7 island kingdoms, Chaldrea being the largest. When she shifted her gaze back to Dolion, she found him staring at her. Her face blanched. What is it? Dolion lifted his eyebrows up and down, looking like he had just been caught. He cleared his throat. You just look very lovely this morning. Andraya started. How preposterous! For one entire year, she had never heard him be anything but harsh or dismissive toward her. And now this? She eyed him with suspicion. Dolion returned the look. Your Majesty, do you intend to keep us standing for the entire duration of this discussion? Andraya cracked a smile. She still was not accustomed to everyone having to stand until she gave direction. Indeed not. Let us sit. The Chancellor decided to forego his tan leather chair, which looked quite comfortable, and sat at the bulky writing desk across from Andraya. He interlocked his fingers and placed his hands in front of him on the wooden surface. Tell me what is on your mind, my queen. Andraya cocked her head. Why the sudden change in cordiality toward me, Chancellor? His lips split into a tiny smile. For once, Andraya didn't hate his handsome face. He inhaled a deep breath. Yes, I can see how you would think I am always unpleasant. I suppose that late husband of yours always put me in a bad mood. His smile broadened a bit. Andraya knew it was an attempt at humor for her sake, but she could not even force out a courteous laugh. Nothing about Gordon was funny. Dolion's eyes dropped with the awkward silence. And may I ask what caused your unpleasant mood yesterday at that rowdy council meeting? Dolion looked caught again. He smacked his lips together before meeting her eyes. I suppose I feel pressure to put on airs in front of all those older gentlemen. Andraya stared at him with curiosity. It was true. He was only a few years older than she was, and she herself definitely put on airs for anyone royal. But she was not about to admit that. How very strange Dolion was revealing this to her. But Dolion sat up straight. I do have more than a decade of experience in the royal court, and ever since I was a young lad, I have been trained to do the very thing I am doing. I believe I am quite qualified. Do you agree? Of course you are qualified, Chancellor. Dolion grinned, looking delighted at her response. You may call me Dolion. Andraya shook her head slightly. I don't believe so. The Chancellor's eyes bore into hers. Perhaps not yet. Then he leaned forward in earnest. My queen, considering I am your royal advisor, and you agree I am qualified, how about you let me make the decisions now? All blood drained from the queen's face. Excuse me? Dolion reached out and placed his hand on hers. Just for a little while, until I can teach you what you need to learn. Andraya pulled her hand away and placed it in her lap. She thought she saw a flash of anger cross over Dolion's eyes. "I cannot agree to that," she said coolly. "Why not? You know I have more knowledge and experience than you. It's not an insult. I want to help." Andraya smirked. "You mean you want to help your own agenda?" Dolion leaned back in his chair and folded his arms across his chest. "And what might that be?" "To trade with Caleen," Andraya said with exasperation. Dolion graced her with a dramatic eye roll. "Please, madam, I do not care much for that kingdom." "Then why do you insist on keeping them in our pocket?" Andraya snapped. Dolion leaned forward again and returned her curt tone. "Because it's profitable. Can't you see? There's a reason Chaldrea is the wealthiest of the island kingdoms. Its credit lies with the smart business decisions of our nobility." "Or your greed," Andraya countered. "Is it greedy to provide employment for commoners? You do know we have the wealthiest commoners of all the islands as well, do you not?" Dolion grinned at Andraya's lack of response. "Be that as it may, I do not need you to make every decision for me. I am perfectly capable on my own," the queen said. Dolion let out a boisterous laugh, then tried to cover it up with a cough. The queen's blood boiled, like he had just thrown a torch at her heart. She stood abruptly, glaring down at the Chancellor. Dolion stood too, raising his hands in apology, but still attempting to stifle his chuckles. "I meant no offense, Well, you did offend," Andraya shouted. "And I will make my own decisions regarding these trades, and I swear our goods will not touch Calen's tainted soil." For one split second, terror struck Andraya's chest as she saw a fire in Dolion's eyes that seethed abhorrent resemblance to Gordon's. But he clenched his teeth and stuffed his hands in his pockets. "If that truly is your choice, I guarantee you will regret it." "I have no doubt that I will not," Andraya countered, her tone back to normal. "Suit yourself," Dolion sneered. "But don't say I did not warn you." Andraya took opportunity to give him one last glare before darting away. And that concludes Chapter 6. I hope you come back next Thursday for Chapter 7, which is called Fierce and Forgotten. If you want to find out more about Brenda's books, you can visit brendasbooks.net. Until next time, take care.